sort of set, which is sharing more recent poems. And I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about a practice, and this is really inspired in part by Saul. In his collection Headwaters, he has a section at the end that I think he's going to be reading from later, called Field Notes, and it's a lot of haiku. So I guess think it makes sense that both Saul and I love the haiku form. And so one of the things that I've been doing really since the pandemic started, I call it my grounding, is that in the morning when I go for walks, I have sort of a regular walking practice, and I think all of us are walking more as a result of the pandemic. And because I always have my phone with me now, I often will just let my eye be caught by something that intrigues me, and I'll come back to my desk and then write a haiku about it, whatever it might be that day. And so I've got this kind of long pages and pages now of haiku from early in the pandemic. And so I'll just share a couple of those. And I also, when I've taught at NCI, I've also, my students and I, we've done some walking meditation. We've done something similar to this, and then we've written linked verse or a renga. And so those of you who are out there, I know there's some of you, I see Wendy and Sue, that you'll remember the renga that we worked on together in Alaska last summer. So this one is called Solomon's Seal. Your name too heavy for delicate white flowers, fallen stars under our feet. This one is Skunk Cabbage, and most of you, I think, can probably name the week that it arrives. It was early in the spring. So much darkness, but beneath tangled roots, yellow lantern shines. And then just one more, or two more actually. This was taken, I was walking at a place in Port Hadlock that had an old iron foundry, and there were just some bricks that had sunk below the sand. So last century's bricks, just an inch above sand. Tide rising, imperceptible, advancing. And then an image of a boat balanced on a log. Driftwood washed up, bound with twine. How long will you balance? Precarious. So that's a little sample of some haiku, and I think that Saul's going to do the response to that later on. I'm going to share just a couple other poems written during the pandemic, and really I think for me, writing poems has helped just ground me during these times. That and being able to take my daily walks. I'm really grateful to live in beautiful places, and listening to the news when I can and turning it off when I can't. This poem was inspired by a news story, and I think many of us, you'll remember it, I think, when you hear it. This was written on March 18th, so it was really early in the pandemic, and it really feels like another lifetime now. Each day, the world grows smaller and larger. As we retreat to our homes, those lucky to have them, stock up on what we think we'll need: toilet paper, hand sanitizer, flour, beans. Begin to understand what it means to hunker down. In public, try out social distancing. Smile, nod, nervous, wonder, is this 6 feet? When what we want is to embrace every service person we meet, the efficient masked bagger at QFC, the weary pharmacist, the stoic neighbor hobbling up the street. The world now in our living room, and we watch in disbelief as bodies stack up on nightly news, as doctors in Italy must choose whose life to save. Meanwhile, our phones beep the rising COVID count for our county, new guidelines for gathering from 250 to 50 to 10 in 1 week. Then tonight on the news, watch those exiled on ancient iron balconies, the last common space, Join their voices, reach across what little divides, to fill the death-drenched air with song, rock arias, and last, their national anthem. And from our living room, an ocean and a continent away, we hear a voice, our own stubborn belief in the human species, despite all the ways we've bungled it, rise above the fear, the uncertainty, the despair. Join in. And I'm just going to share one other poem, I think, in the interest of time. And this one is a little bit lighter. It's written, I've written several poems about my husband. One of them that I'm going to skip in the interest of time is a poem about cutting his hair. In fact, I have a whole series of those now because I do cut his hair every few months. And but this one is actually about, the title is During the Pandemic, My Husband Goes Through His Sock Drawer. I'm still in bed when he comes in, dumps his socks on the floor, begins to sort. What's your goal, I asked, to organize or reduce? Both, he says, methodically matching sock to sock, pairing the cuffs, rolling them in a neat bundle while I watch. I remember when we met how this defined him, his quiet sense of order extending even to his drawers. My socks roam free through dark seas, each morning an adventure, a victory when I'd find a match. Hard now to recall that time we needed to argue whose way was right. An argument I never won, of course, except in my own discreet disorder. 20 plus years later, we worked out our roles. I washed the clothes, separating lights from darks, dumped the clean, tangled wad on the bed. That's when he comes in, listens to the ball game as he folds each t-shirt as the shopkeepers do. With practiced hands, helps each sock find its mate, rolls them into a ball and lines them up, soldiers at the ready. And 23 years later, I'm not sure what it means that I'm grateful for this, for our willingness to let each other be right, for these small compromises that keep peace, for the mundane ways we restore order, for each ordinary moment doing each ordinary thing together, while outside the world rages. I guess I just want a quick thank you to my husband. I think all of us who are sharing the pandemic with somebody else, it's a journey in itself deeper into a relationship. And I'm grateful to my husband for being the way he is. So with that, I'll pass it along back to you, Saul.
Okay. I am unmuted. That looks like a plan. Double checking that I really am unmuted. Yes. Thanks. It's fascinating to listen to hear those haiku, and so many people I know. I mean, so many poets carry a little pocket notebook, and for me, and it sounds like for you too, Holly. It's just this kind of it's catching images, or sometimes it's just words, or sometimes I don't know, sometimes it's just a line, but I find that really seeds me, and more than anything else, sometimes just a few words bring something back enough to make it start turning into something else. So I just went through, after we talked about this afternoon, and you sharing your walking writing practice, I just grabbed a few what I was calling field notes, just because haiku, I think, makes some people think of elementary school and teacher, for me anyway, a teacher walking around with a ruler counting syllables and whacking kids if they got them wrong. So these are just images, mostly about light, and then one just because it just needed to move away from that sometimes. So these are not connected. These are just short. Light falls, a blackbird calls from shore, the lake grows dark. Colors fade. Night begins to climb the other side of the hill. The wild duck is black inside the full circle of the moon. In the morning, fresh snow, and on the snow, fox tracks, white on white. And this one was written after a long series of conversations with Teal, my youngest child. At every border, the homeless are reminded of their home. So let's see, we've got enough time for this. We want to have lots of time for questions. So let's, I wanted to follow up that wonderful poem about your husband's socks. Because we all have those chores we do. And this pandemic gave me a new chore. And my mom is on this Zoom tonight. She's 96, and this is called, Maggie, this is for you, Folding My Mother's Laundry. It seems so simple. These blouses, pants, sweatshirt, underwear, mixed together with bed linens and a few kitchen towels. Old people's clothes, easy to put on, not too many buttons or belts. Your brightly patterned socks make me smile. Each week I pick up the bag outside your door and several days later return them, neatly folded, the way you taught me when I was a child, or was it when I went off to college? It's called independent living, this place you now call home. And you certainly are independent, and sometimes a bit impatient if I can't meet your schedule. To make amends, I bring you flowers from our garden, novels from our bookshelves, waiting for the day we can hug, waiting for the day when we can resume our former lives, knowing that we can't ever really do that again. There have been so many normal things that happened now that seem normal now, but that were not. This one is called The Bookseller. The libraries are closed. I call the used bookstore, arrange to meet the bookseller outside on the street, where I trade cash for a paper bag holding a copy of My Antonia by Willa Cather. Just like the good old days, the seller says, and we joke about drug transactions. I talk with friends about the books we finished and what we're going to read next. We trade in a new strange currency of hardbacks and paper. I prefer fiction these days, something long and deep and dark with many chapters. I still read about politics, even though it depresses me. These letters, words, and paragraphs seem more essential now, precious as gold or health. I realized when I was looking at this last poem that it starts out saying, listening to friends at work. And I wrote this, and then other pieces came in. And of course, this is about sort of different places and times, but I realized this was listening to friends at work, but it was on a Zoom call. It was at a staff meeting. And it's such a strange thing to even now just remember that I thought we really were all at work together. So it's a strange time. This seemed like a good place to end and then move into questions and other things. What we can learn from crows. Listening to friends at work talk about systemic racism. One woman shares a story about stopping her car on a country road to move the body of a dead crow from the asphalt into the woods. She relates how she was suddenly surrounded by dozens of crows swooping overhead, circling and calling. They were grieving, she whispered. This is how it begins. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'm looking forward to Holly, you and I talking more and inviting everyone else to join the conversation.